Hivin and Vibin with Dr. Beebe.
Dr. Leigh Richardson, PhD, and she is a leader in brain health and performance, blending psychology, business, coaching, and counseling to deliver a holistic approach to optimizing human potential. She is the author of Turn Your Brain On, Get Your Game On, offering actionable insights into achieving peak performance. As owner of the Brain Performance Center and Institute, Dr. Richardson developed the Brain Capital Program, a transformative initiative for executives and leaders to enhance decision making, resilience, and leadership effectiveness. Her expertise in leadership and peak performance is supported by her doctoral dissertation, The Experience of Organizational Leaders with Decision Making in a Crisis, which explores how leaders navigate high stakes challenges. Welcome, Leigh, to our show, Hiving and Viving with Dr. Beebe.
Thank you for having me.
Well, then, let's get started. Uh, I'll start with the very first things that that come to my mind, and that is, how did you write the book Turn Your Brain On, Get Your Game On, and what made you write the book?
So that book was written about 4 years ago, and when I first got in it working with the brain, it was back in 2005, and I would start to have conversations with people around depression and anxiety, and the response I got was, "Oh no, I don't have any of that," because of the stigma. There was so much negative stigma associated with mental health, and I thought, people need to know it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay if you don't do something about it. And that was the motivation behind Turn Your Brain On, Get Your Game On.
All right. That's your practical application of what you did, and then you put it out there for the people to read it. That's fantastic. And with that, what made you then start your institute, the Brain Performance Center and Institute?
Well, the Brain Performance Institute really rolled out of the Brain Performance Center. When we went through the pandemic a few years ago, I had a lot of clients that did own businesses, and as they went through the pandemic, they had a harder time making decisions, and they had a harder time managing their businesses. And I got the request, gosh, can we bring some of this brain strategy stuff into the workplace? And of course we can. And that's how the Brain Performance Institute emerged.
Okay. And the Brain Capital Program, what does that have in it?
So with the brain capital, this kind of goes back to our first conversation about the negative stigma around mental health. And when I opened the Brain Performance Center in 2009, I said, I'm not using those words anymore. I'm not even saying mental health. I'm saying brain health. And then when I opened the Brain Performance Institute in 2021, I said, I'm not using brain health anymore. I'm going to talk about brain capital. Because when I ask leaders what their most important asset is, oh, it's my strategic plan. Oh, it's my patented technology. No, it's not. It's your brain. It is absolutely your brain. So the brain capital reflects the value of investing in your brain health. And it's a framework that I use through all my programs. And resilience is the foundation of leadership. And resilience is not just being able to focus and think clearly. It's also emotional and it's social. I mean, certainly being able to make good decisions with intention, and being aware of your thinking patterns. We all have natural biases, and those natural biases impact and how we perform. So that's cognitive. And then emotionally, I think that we have to be able to lead with empathy. We've got to listen and listen closely to make room for what other people are feeling before we rush and try to solve the problem. And then, it's so easy to go into analysis paralysis. And I've been there and I've done that. And I've learned over the years that if I don't, as you mentioned earlier, application, if I don't apply what I've learned, it doesn't really have much value. So I've learned to move with a little bit more quicker, go from insight to action.
So you have almost touched upon what your guiding principles, you are a coach. So your guiding principles, you have touched upon them. Could you elaborate more on, what is it that is your mantra?
Well, I mean, my mantra is this: lead with the brain in mind, the heart in hand, and the wisdom in action. And that brain in mind, that is just what we talked about, being what are your thinking patterns and what are your biases and how do you approach decision making? And that heart in hand, how are you connecting with other people? And how are you paying attention to what their emotional needs are? And then wisdom in action, you've got to get integrated into, you've got to get connected into what's going on around you. So, and I really feel like that alignment really makes me a more balanced leader, and it makes me both strategic and more human, because you have to be compassionate as a leader.
So, how did your journey as a coach begin?
Well, actually, it began way back in the day. I was working with a neurologist, and we were doing brain training. And I approached him, and I had been there about 6 months. And I said, I've noticed that after we start to change the brain, we've got to coach. We've got to help people move forward and put a plan in place. And he said, Oh, I said, I'm going to get certified as a coach. He said, Okay, that's a good idea. And that's really, in this world, that's where it started. This is my second life. My first life was in human resources. And that's what gave me the understanding of the value of coaching.
So there we have. So I was in human resources, you are in human resources. We are two human resources professionals who started off in the first life that way, and in the second life, we are coaches. That's so amazing. But when you were a human resources professional, how and when, did the coin drop that coaching was an essential part of being a successful human resource professional?
Well, I was with Exxon Enterprises for about 11 or 12 years, and that was, I'm dating myself, but that was when they had a lot of money and they were investing and starting joint venture groups. And there was very little structure. They had the brightest minds, all the patents, but very little structure. And the more brilliant the mind, the more sure that they were, I have the answers. I have all the answers. And I learned. And you can't tell them, no, you don't. You that doesn't work. But what you can do is you can coach them around talking about teamwork and how 1 plus 1 can equal 5 if you put the right pieces in it, and helping them think through how to do that.
Right. So that is how you were able to knit and understand that this is where coaching comes, and that's where your coaching practice rooted, and you started actually coaching.
And then after I left Exxon, I started my own consulting business. And that was certainly, there was a lot of training and leading, and that leading came by with coaching and giving them strategic approaches, different ideas. And I set the stage. Don't just throw it out there.
Lovely. Don't just throw it out there. That's the right phase to have. And what would you describe? Nothing beautiful happens without some pain or some struggle that you might have gone through. So what were those struggles which has made you the coach that you are today?
Well, you're right. No pain, no gain. That's very, very clear. And once I transitioned from the HR world into the brain world, I did that because of personal motivation. One of my sons was hit by a car, and that was second grade. And by the time he got to fifth grade, he told me his brain was broken. I have been in ICU twice with brain injury. So I've always had a personal drive to understand how do you understand the brain? Why does the brain not work? And why does it do work? And so just looking back and saying, I'm going to combine all of my life experience and put the psychology, put the organizational culture, the development piece in, and add neuroscience. And that really gave me the ability to pivot and to be able to go in a different direction.
Absolutely. So that was where you shaped up, your entire shape as a coach happened.
It absolutely did. And I have to say that coaching, how to, as a mom, I certainly learned a little bit about coaching. So, and my boys are completely grown now, but it's just a way to learn how to communicate in a more with using positive psychology and helping others think, let's get creative. Let's think outside the box. Why are we staying in the box today? And encouraging others has really, I learned from everybody that I work with.
So how would you say your coaching, the program that you have, is it will be enriching your coachees, the people who are coming to get coached from you?
Well, I come at it from a very different standpoint. I come at it from I call it neuropsychology, and being able to understand how the brain works. And do you ever feel like you're stuck? Yeah, well, let me explain to you what happens in the brain that gets you stuck, or what triggers that fear, or what triggers that emotion. And being able to come at it with a different perspective, kind of it differentiates me from there's a lot of good coaching models, but mine starts with negative thoughts create negative behavior, and negative behavior creates negative feelings.
Right. So do you base it on positive psychology? Is that how you develop your program?
Well, that's one. I base it off of cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy, focusing on, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve and accomplish? And then what stands in your way? And a lot of times, what stands in our way is what's going on in our head. And if you can tap into where are those barriers coming from? I started the Brain Performance Center back in 2009. And in the States in 2008, we had a major financial hardship. I wasn't personally impacted by it. So I didn't. This is a cash business, so I didn't think I would be impacted at all. And I was. And first time I couldn't make payroll, I I got out the shoulds. Leigh, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. And guess what? I didn't do it. And then they brought out their two little friends, shame and blame. And I realized, you know what's standing in my way? I am. I'm telling myself what I should be doing and not be focusing, and I need to focus on what I could be doing. So it's just get out of your head, identify what the barriers are because nobody really understands them better than you do.
So true, so true. You are your best friend or your worst enemy.
Or both.
Yeah, absolutely. Both at the same time. And that's the worst case when you have both at the same time,
It
because
is.
then you're juggling with, two selves and you are trying to understand which one to go with, to become friends with. And That's where things work out. Could you tell me more about the therapies that you just spoke about?
Absolutely. When you say therapy, you're talking about the cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavior therapy. Those are basically the dialectical behavior kind of stems from the cognitive behavior, but we all have unhealthy thoughts. We all do. And the shoulds was my biggest one. But we all have, we have black and white thinking, and it's either all or nothing. And some of us strive for perfection. I honestly can say I learned the hard way that there is no perfection. And Brene Brown taught probably her book, The Gifts of Imperfection. Let go of who you think you're supposed to be and put your arms around who you are. That taught me a lot.
Right. Uh, what is your legacy that you are leaving for the next generation?
Well, I hope this is global. So I decided after starting the Brain Performance Center that I really want to create social change around brain health. I want people to understand and appreciate the value of it. And I realized to do that, I needed to go back and I needed to add PhD to my name. And I did. And so I hope that my legacy will be that people understand that the brain and the body, this is one unit. We're so focused on our physical health that, if I think there's something wrong with my heart, how long does it take you to get to an appointment to see a doctor? Not very long. If you get up and you can't go to work because you're so overwhelmed, you just have a nasty little talk with yourself. Suck it up, buttercup. Let's go. You got to do this. And that is not the right conversation. Start to look at. I hope that people will go to the American Heart Association and look how they link anxiety to heart attacks and strokes. And so that I hope through my work that I can create the knowledge that, yes, the body keeps score of everything that's going on in the brain, but it's the brain that is driving it. And it's the brain that is in charge. And with that, I hope that organizations will pay attention to how they're spending their benefit dollars. And maybe they'll put some funding behind mental health and coaching, and some have, but there's a lot of opportunity out there for that.
Yeah, so coming to your when you said your brain is actually connected, so physiologically, whatever you might be doing, physically, whatever you might be doing, there's actually a factor in the brain. So I read that when you have a pain in the back, that could actually be because of the stress you're carrying. When you have a sprain or a ache in the shoulders, that could be because of the responsibility you're being weighed down with. Could you give
I
us
agree
more
with that.
descriptions of
I,
this?
I absolutely do. And I talk with people all the time. Well, where do you feel your anxiety? Oh, I feel it in my chest. I feel it in my stomach. I feel it in my neck tension. Where do you feel that depression? I mean, that people can always tell you where they're feeling that emotion. And I think that you make a very valid point with it. It's not just the physical where you're feeling it, it's what's driving the feeling.
Right. Well, when with your therapies and how is it that you look at the role of self-awareness?
Well, I think self-awareness is the very first thing, and that played a big role in my dissertation and how people made decisions, because being self-aware and self-awareness really comes from your resilience, that ability to have clarity, to only look at relative information and be accurate and be precise. And to me, that is where the foundation for leadership, personally, in your personal life, and professionally as well.
So, I'll just go back a little and let me start with when you were a child.
Okay.
Did you know that today you're going to be a coach? That, down the years you would be a coach?
Well, actually, I thought I was going to be a veterinarian, and in some ways, that is a coach.
I agree totally. Yes. So you did think of that, and then how did you shape out and become an HR professional? That journey is still unraveled. The journey from HR to coach, yes, you have mentioned that.
Right. Well, I got married and I moved to Connecticut, and I was lucky enough, I had some background, and I was lucky enough to get pulled into the HR group at Exxon Enterprises. And it just kind of it was and I say lucky, but I don't really believe in luck. I believe that things were meant to be, and I certainly sought every opportunity to do that and to put myself in that role, but it was something that was meant to be. And I think that we all have strengths that we play into, or we try to play into, whether we know it or not. And my ability to connect with people and to listen to people. And I used to marvel at my mother. She could talk to a tree. She absolutely she could talk to a tree. And I think that I learned a lot just by watching how effective communication, how influential that can be.
Okay, so in some ways, what I hear is that listening and communicating were the two things that actually shaped you into becoming an HR professional. Am I getting in the right track?
I think so. I think that certainly if you want somebody to share their problems with you, you've got to listen. And more importantly, well, I believe the one thing that everybody wants, they want to be seen and they want to be heard.
Right. So, how do you think you have, now that you've been coaching for quite a number of years and having built your own program, how do you keep yourself strong?
I focus on my resilience. I check in with myself every single day. Hi, Leigh. How you doing today? Not doing so good. Well, what do you need? Do you need to connect with somebody? Do you need to just get out and breathe some fresh air, feel the sun on your back? Do you need to meditate? Now I've started visualizing, and I've started visualizing a lavender field. And when I visualize that lavender field, I can smell it. I can feel myself calming down. So I guess the easy way to say it is I practice what I preach.
Okay. And do you make your coaches go through a practice like that too in your program?
I offer it. And some people love visualization. Some people love progressive muscle relaxation. Some people love those that are business, business, business. Oh, you mean hit the pause button? Yes, I mean hit the pause button. Put your phone in a drawer and time yourself. Do not look at it or touch it for 10 minutes. So it's just finding how that person can check in with themselves.
Right. And I'm sure it is very different for every individual.
That it is. And when you look at the younger generation, they've grown up with technology. It's so hard when you say disconnect. This puts frequencies into your brain. Disconnect. And I'll say, where does your phone sleep? Well, I usually fall asleep with it in my hand. You don't need to be sleeping with your phone. There are a lot more interesting things that you can fall asleep with than your phone.
So, what do you think are the best ways, or could be the most practical ways of this current generation, or the generation, the Generation Z upwards? What do you think they should be doing, or how do you think they should be leading a better life than what they're doing right now?
I think they need to redefine their relationship with technology. It's and when we went through the pandemic, we went to school with technology, we went to work with technology, and we've become so dependent upon it. And now with AI, people think that I did a radio interview and on a study that was found on young people, and 35% said they would rather talk to AI than a human being. We are forgetting how important human connection is.
I totally agree with you. Like looking eye to eye, having that eye contact, having even touch, maybe, if possible, is so important to keep those human feelings, and which helps us through our various hormones that we have, and get those going. They really matter a lot. I remember when I first came out of the COVID restrictions that we had, and I went back to work. One of the first things I did was, I think I was hugging every human I saw. I just couldn't stop myself. I'm not such a exuberant person in general. I'm quite reserved per se, but here I was going. It was just spontaneous. And when I met someone, I would just open my arms and just hug, and the other person would obviously reciprocate. And so that's what I did. And later on, I was like, oh my God, I did something which is so totally not me. I would shake a hand generally, or wave at someone or smile or something, but hugging is something that I have not really done at work before. So it was so amazing to find myself doing something, because I was so relieved to find humans on the other side, without a virtual screen in between. It was so lovely to know that yes, there's someone whom I can see, whose eyeball color of the eyes can be seen properly and nicely. So yes, I do understand what it is to have that human touch, and I do believe that AI is taking up roles or positions in our life which should be sh- should be thought of a little carefully. The borders that we have created should be kept, should be strengthened. There should be a line that drawn and said that this is still where AI should work and not beyond that. But again, today I was reading that in Australia there has been, they have come up with a kind of a cure that can actually happen from inside you, and they just input something in you, and that helps you to regenerate your cells. And that can be so fantastic, for cancer, for long diseases. Um, it can be an amazing cure. So we do have, on one hand, this kind of beautiful things that can happen, but we also
Absolutely.
have, on the other hand, that we don't want it in our daily lives to an extent where we start even relying on them for a lot of other things, especially for children and for young adults. I definitely think they need to be a way. I think there should be a rule or a regulation that you should not have children using phone or something like that for a very long time. And then, but that's not for me to put in, but something like that would help, I think.
Well, there
you know
definitely we need guidance because
Mm.
kids have grown up. They can take a phone and go places that I would never get to. It's just their intuition. But we do need to have social responsibility. I mean, AI is here to stay, and as you said, it can do wonderful things. It can create opportunities for us for life and for the future. But we've got to know AI is a large language model. It's not a human being.
Exactly. I sometimes feel, like children should actually be given those phones that we had before the smartphones came in, which just you could just dial numbers and just call people. A phone that was used for just being a phone, calling people. That's about it. I
Yeah,
think that's what children need till a certain age, and getting used to this screen or getting used to this screen all the time, I don't think is really right for the children. That is my thought. uh, I think science is also picking up on that, and is
absolutely.
is talking about that using that actually stops our brain from growing and regenerating. So yes, I think as coaches there's a lot of responsibility on us to share these information with our coaches and to make it for them to understand that how seriously they need to reflect on their practices, on their habits, on their it's the habits actually. The rest of the things will just happen if they can take care of the habits. I think the behaviors and the practices will just reform. What do you think about this?
Well, I think it all comes from the brain. If you can challenge yourself and if you can think creatively and if you can be able, adaptability is key because we think, oh, there's only one way to do this. There's only one. No, we've got to be able to adapt and pivot. When you're in this situation and you clearly see, that was what I was gonna do, but that's not. Pivot, change it. Have the confidence and the belief in your brain and how your brain works. And if you take care of your brain, it'll take care of you.
I totally agree on that you need to take care of your brains. That is very, very important, understanding how your brain works and learning to not play with it because it is one asset that will stay with you all through your life if you can take care of it. So I totally agree on that. Leigh, I would like you to share how would people, our listeners or our viewers connect with you?
They can find me, Dr. Leigh Richardson, on LinkedIn. And of course, there's these things called good old fashioned websites. There is drleighrichardson.com. There is thebrainperformanceinstitute.co and thebrainperformancecenter.com. Those are all good ways. And social media, Facebook, Instagram, and then be real old fashioned and pick up the phone and call. The phone number's on the website and schedule a consultation.
Fantastic. I think this is a lovely way to, for people to get in touch with you because you have so much to offer, especially with the Brain Capital program, which I think is absolutely necessary, not only for executives and leaders, to enhance their decision making or their resilience or their effectiveness as a leader, but also for those who are aspiring to be leaders. With this, I would ask you a last question on how, nowadays, these current generations are averse to leadership. How do you uh, work with these coaches? Have you come across this kind of coaches? First question. Second question, how do you work with them so that they understand that leadership is the essence of growing and building anything on this earth?
Well, I think, many people have worked within an environment where leadership was exclusive. It wasn't inclusive. And, one of the things that when I find people that do have a hard time saying they want leadership, I'll tell them to read Brene Brown has written some really good books, and her book, Dare to Lead, a couple of messages. You have to be, there's 4 values that she talks about: vulnerability, and being able to be vulnerable makes you the type of leader that will have difficult conversations instead of avoiding them. Because many times when I ask them, why haven't you seen good leadership? Well, no, when I try to talk about something, nobody, everybody just wants to ignore me. They won't talk about it. And to lead with values.
Right.
So I think if
Okay.
there's,
Yep.
and be brave. You've got and have that resilience to embrace. You can fail just as well as you can succeed.
Yep. Totally agree. Yes, yes. The the ability to face failure on the face, to take the risk to fail. You never know, you can succeed too, but failing and success are just two sides of a coin. That's about it. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Thank you so much. This was lovely having a chat with you, and I am really thankful to you for sharing all your insights and experiences. Uh, we look forward to empowering our audience with your wisdom. Leigh, thank you very much for being with us here today.
I'm grateful that you had me.
Thank you. It was lovely talking to you.